What's going on, box fans? Julian Williams with The Distance. I'm here to give you my number 2 light heavyweight for the week in my top 5. My number 5 was Ezzard Charles. My number 4 is Michael Spinks. My number 3 was Roy Jones Jr. And now on to my number 2. My number 2 isn't really talked about much because he was in an era where there were many great heavyweights. He did fight at heavyweight. He did fight Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. But where he made noise was the light heavyweight division. And my boxer for today is Bob Foster. Bob Foster was 6'3". He had a long wingspan. He he had a very good left jab, very good, very precise, very accurate with it. It always landed, and he knew when to throw it. And he was pretty much just a knockout artist. See, people in modern times talk about Paul Williams jumping from division to division, and how it's unbelievable how he could lose all that weight and stay at this certain weight and stuff. But think back about 30, 35 years ago. Bob Foster was a light heavyweight. He was a light heavyweight champion, and he tried to become a heavyweight champion as well, because one, he wasn't getting, because it got to the point where fighting at light heavyweight was getting a little boring for him, because he's winning all these matchups, and honestly there was really no competition for him at light heavyweight at that time. And along with that, it's like you got all the big names at heavyweight, so you might as well try to fight at heavyweight. But all of his losses, I believe, were at heavyweight. He never lost. I don't think he's lost a match at light heavyweight. But anyway, on to Bob Foster. Bob Foster started out in the 1959 Pan American Games. He won a silver medal, and he did go out for the 1960 Olympic team with Muhammad Ali, but as a light heavyweight, and Muhammad Ali beat him out for it. And he did state in an article I read somewhere that he did suggest that Ali move up to heavyweight and he stay at light heavyweight, but they actually wanted him to go down to middleweight. And being as tall as he was, he didn't think he can get down that low. So he fights at light heavyweight, he's campaigning there, and then he would jump up to heavyweight a few times. In his career, he lost to Doug Jones, and he lost to Ernie Terrell early in his career. Ernie Terrell, known for being beaten by Muhammad Ali and insulted by him when he called him Cassius. He lost to Ernie Terrell, and then he kept campaigning at light heavyweight. He kept moving up and down. But see, the difference between Paul Williams and Bob Foster, though, is Bob Foster moved up a whole 40 pounds. He would move up the heavyweight size. And see, back then, there was no in-between heavyweight and light heavyweight. It was just light heavyweight, and then anything past light heavyweight was heavyweight. But anyway, Bob Foster went on. He had some successful matchups at light heavyweight. He was undefeated there. And the demand was getting much higher for a matchup with Dick Tiger. Dick Tiger, who was the former middleweight champion, had just defeated Jose Torres, another great fighter, who I believe is in the Hall of Fame today, just passed away earlier this year. He defeated Jose Torres, and the demand for the fight was getting much higher. And they were actually in negotiations to fight, but Bob Foster didn't have $100,000, which was the fee for being the champion. And he kept winning, and he had to get people to financially back him to get this fight, because fans wanted this fight and he earned his shot. So it's like this. It wouldn't make any sense if a man who earned his shot at the title couldn't have a shot at the title because he couldn't pay for it. See that in recent times, that's why Carlos Baldomir had to drop a couple of his belts when he was the welterweight champion. But onto Bob Foster, he had like I said earlier in the video, he had a long left jab. He stood tall, but he could crouch. But sometimes he crouched down. But everything was on the outside for Bob Foster. He set up his knockouts with that left jab, and he had a fierce left hook. He could knock you out with a right hook as well. And if you look at the matchup with Dick Tiger, he just disposed of him in like 4 rounds. Just Tiger was there with him the first round, but the second round to the last round, it was all Foster, and just all of a sudden it was just, I believe it was a sweeping left hook that knocked out Dick Tiger, that just knocked him completely out. And Dick Tiger was about 5'7", so Foster was fighting big, but sometimes he had to crouch down. And even when he crouched down, he was still fighting big. And just all of a sudden, that hook came, and it put Dick Tiger to sleep. And after Vic Tiger, there was Vicente Rondon, I believe his name was, who was a champion somewhere else. I believe it was in South America or something. He was a champion somewhere, and he got knocked out in like 2 rounds by the left hook. And then a matchup with one of the best knockouts I've ever seen. It was Bob Foster and Mike Quarry, and he defeated Mike Quarry. Mike Quarry was fighting back, and all of a sudden, he hit him with that hook, and it put Mike Quarry completely to sleep. It knocked him completely out. And and on top of that, he's been in some matches with fighters who just fought back, like Chris Finnegan, and stuff. So Bob Foster, I think, I have it number 2, because stylistically he was more of a complete boxer than Roy Jones, because he set up things off the jab. He used his size as an advantage. He knew how to cut off the ring very well with his size, and on top of that, he was a knockout artist. See, people weren't looking for like a decision win. People were looking for the knockout, and it was a matter of when he was gonna knock you out. That was the thing about his fights. And yeah, he did move up to heavyweight to fight Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, and wasn't successful at that. But even though he lost to them, he's still one of the best of all time, perhaps one of the greatest light heavyweights of all time in my book. And like I said, I don't think Roy Jones would be able to beat Bob Foster, because Roy Jones is about 5'10", 5'11". Bob Foster is about 6'3". So Roy Jones would have to, and I don't see Roy Jones doing any up jabs or anything against Bob Foster. I think Bob Foster could and on top of that, comparing the eras is a hard thing to do, and it's close to impossible. But Bob Foster, I think, would knock out Roy Jones late with his style, because I think he would set him up with that long left jab that got there. And it wasn't a matter of winning. I mean, it wasn't a matter of defending yourself from it, because it was going to get there either way. And the left hook was just dazed people, and sometimes he would, and you were in trouble if he doubled up that jab. But anyway, that was my number 2 for this week, Bob Foster. I think he's very underrated as far as the all-time greats are concerned, because you hear names like Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier and Ken Norton and George Foreman and Roberto Duran and Danny Lopez, fighters from the 70s, and then you don't really hear Bob Foster among the names of boxing's elite at that time. But Bob Foster was just as elite as these guys. He never, I don't think, lost the fight at light heavyweight. He retired the light heavyweight champion, and after Bob Foster, the belts weren't unified for like another 8 years. So anyway, that's my thoughts on my number 2. Be sure to comment or whatever. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow for number 1. Peace.